We're going to talk about safety. None of us, well, let me go back to that slide. Creating a program, a safety program that works. How many of you have a safety program? Keep your hands up. Don't let them down. Is it in writing? Oh, good. Same hands. Awesome. Okay. If it's not in writing, you don't have a safety program. So that's the first thing. And it needs to work because it will reduce risk. If you, your workman's compensation insurance, typically if you have a safety program and it's written and you actually do it, typically they give you a discount. I've seen discounts up to 10%. Typically it's 5%, but you can get a discount on your workman's comp for sure. We've already talked about no one's phone went off. That was really impressive for 2 hours. We didn't have to have anyone dancing in their chair.
By the way, that discount goes away the first claim.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
I get audited every year, and they raise my rates every year, and I have not had an accident.
Have you not read the clause in insurance? You buy insurance, therefore you will pay more money next year. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
also they're not to really pay.
I mean, my liability insurance goes up every year.
Mine too.
Every year. And it has my whole career. I've never seen it go down. So I don't think that we're ever going to see that. Okay, so we're looking at a picture. What are we looking at?
Safety equipment.
Safety equipment.
What's the belt got to do?
Say it again.
PPE.
PPE. Okay. How many of you use PPE on your sites?
This is an issue hard hat.
Is it a real cowboy hard hat? They make them. They do make them.
Yeah, but they're not OSHA approved.
This is true, but they're cool. So I showed up on a site. I won't name the site. It's here, Salt Lake, big commercial. I have on my leather cowboy boots. And I had my hard hat and my vest and my glasses. And that was actually these glasses. Newer version, but same thing. And they're going to have me go through their little safety training. And the guy walks in and he says, Mark, you can't wear those boots on this site. They're not OSHA approved. I said, well, as a matter of fact, I can, because I'm not a worker. I'm an executive. And as long as they're leather with a rubber sole, I can wear them. And the big boss came in and heard me say that. He says, he's right. He said, well, you have to have safety goggles. I said, no. Polycarbonate, I can shoot with them. I can be on a job site with them. They're legal. Unless I'm welding, doing something that has, where I'm around stuff that would come from the site.
Being an executive.
Exactly. So I met it. Now, somebody said, what's with the belt? You can't show a picture in a construction program without a belt. I mean, come on.
That's a homeowner building.
When I show up with a belt on a job site, people freak out. You even have one? Anyway, you got to have a belt. It's just part of the industry wear, right? My wife even has a belt. She doesn't wear it, but she has it. Okay.
My wife wishes to wear one.
My grandkids love to come help Papa because they get to wear belts. Okay, so the question is, do we wear them? In the commercial industry, boy, isn't it almost always standard? No matter what you're doing, you got to have it on. You got to be wearing it. Residential, up until about 8-9 years ago, it was rare to see PPE on site. Rare. Today, it's still not uncommon to go to a job site and see a lot of individuals on the site without PPE. Now,
Depends on how close to the freeway it is.
well, that's true too. The OSHA guys don't like to go too far off the main drag, do they? Okay.
You when OSHA shows up and you run for your truck and you go, no speaking Espanol.
Yeah, sorry, we've got some stories about that, but we don't have time. Okay, so I want to tell you my story. And the reason I'm going to tell you my story is because it's very indicative of what happens in the construction industry when there's an accident. And so by telling it in a personal fashion, I think that it will put some things in perspective. Because some of us have had accidents. How many of you have ever had an accident on a job site? Any kind of accident. How many of you had an accident on a job site that you couldn't work for a week or more? Okay. How many of you have seen someone who had an accident on the job site that couldn't work on the site ever again?
Yeah.
Okay. Two things you don't want to have happen as an owner of a company. You do not want to have a death on a job site. You just don't want to have it. It's not good. And it's not good because someone has lost their life, but even worse for you is the fallout from that death. even if you had nothing to do with it. So I was on a job site. I'm a custom builder. My partner and I showed up on a job site. We're going to have a walkthrough, a framing walkthrough with the homeowners, Mr. and Mrs. And my concrete guy, I mentioned my neighbor earlier, was on the site prepping for flat work. And specifically, he was going to be pouring the driveway because it was a really big lot and there was a lot of concrete. So we decided we're going to take advantage of this and we're going to get some flat work down. So we were taking advantage of the weather. And he had hired a gentleman to be there with his tractor. It was a front end, it was a big Kubota with a big bucket with the teeth on the bottom of the bucket. And he would, say that again?
Called a working bucket.
A working bucket. Well, I don't call it a working bucket. You'll know why in a minute. But yes, thank you. So he was doing his magic, and it had snowed lightly the night before, and it was probably about 28 degrees that morning. So it was a little bit slippery, a little icy. And we were finished pretty much up with the walkthrough. And I knew, again, because this guy was my neighbor, that concrete was going to be coming. And I knew that they weren't ready for the concrete. So I went out to my vehicle and I grabbed my gloves and picked up a shovel from his truck and went over to help him a little bit. Figured that would be the best use of my time. So I'm out there helping him. And we were both kind of together in an area working. And out of the corner of my eye, the tractor went by to go get another load of gravel from the street. What I didn't see was that he was screwing around and he hit the brakes and spun the tractor to kind of scare us. And I'm facing away from him, so I'm looking at you, Steve, and my buddy's looking at me, and all of a sudden the look on his face, and he dives out of the way. And as I turned, the tractor hit me in the head.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh.
When I woke up,
Out, neighbor.
what was that?
Good looking out, neighbor.
Yeah, no kidding. So when I came to, I was laying in the park strip by the driveway approach, and my partner had his hands on my head with gloves on, and I'm hearing him talk to my neighbor, the concrete guy, and they said, we can get him quicker to the hospital if we don't call the ambulance. Let's just put him in my car. Well, my partner just bought a brand new Explorer, leather interior, and they picked me up and they put me in that, and they take a jacket and put it over my head, and they put my hands like this, and they said, don't move your hands. And they raced me to the hospital. They called my wife. She happened to work at the hospital, so she was there. And make a long story short, the tractor, when it hit me, literally, he'd lifted the bucket. It was just enough that I didn't get hit in the head at the bottom of the bucket, or it would have killed me. But the edge, the lower edge of those teeth is about an inch thick piece of steel. And the bottom edge of that is square. And that hit me right here, because I was like that. And when it hit me, it literally scalped me. Thank you. And so I get to the hospital, and of course, there's blood everywhere. And
Head wounds bleed really well.
they do. They really do. Bottom line, 256 stitches later, a whole lot of x-rays, and a long, long story. And they wheeled me out to the car in a wheelchair. I was in the hospital for about 5 hours, and I was really hungry. And so my wife took me home. I could not walk for about 5 days. My concussion was so bad I had to crawl. And I was off work for a full week and on light duty and I was one of the owners of the company, and I was on light duty for a couple more weeks. But I came this close to being killed on that accident. Roll forward about 4 months, and I'm on a job site. And we're digging. Our Parker is out digging a hole and getting ready for a foundation. And the foundation guy showed up. He's got his trailer with the forms on it, and he's backed it up onto the site. And we're all standing kind of over here talking. And the guy fires up the machine, lifts the bucket, and spins it. And I literally took 2 steps, was up on top of the trailer and over the trailer, and everyone just scattered. And they're on the ground as that bucket swung by everybody.
You're like, I've seen this movie.
Yeah, been there, done that, felt the wounds. I'm not going to have that happen again. The reality is, my daughter says I'm a cat. I have 9 lives. I've now used up 7 of them. I need to be careful. The bottom line is it happens. That's why they call them accidents. But they can be prevented. And the reason they can be prevented is that we just simply have to plan. And the way we plan is we have safety meetings. Now, I'm going to show you a couple pictures here that are kind of telling, but they do happen. We all have had things happen to us. But usually I think we'll find that if we're honest with ourselves, we did something we knew we shouldn't have done, or whoever got hurt probably did something, or someone did something that they shouldn't have been doing.
That guy in the picture right there is doing something wrong. Because you don't have
He is.
You don't have a man against a wall and start pulling up on a backhoe.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Had a friend, actually he does what I do. He's now retired. He's one of my mentors. He was volunteering for the Scouts, and he was up at their camp, one of their campsites, and they were putting in a new water line. He was down in the trench. And guy gave the wrong signal to the operator. Operator swang while he was still in the trench. Bucket hit him on the side of the head. Knocked him cold. They raced him to the hospital. I got a phone call. I showed up the next day. And when I walked in the room, he was so swollen and bandaged that I couldn't tell it was him. And this was one of my dearest friends. And when he said, "Mark, thanks for coming," I knew who it was because I recognized his voice. Again, miscommunication. Someone didn't do what they were supposed to do on the job site. He was in the trench doing what he was supposed to do but hadn't cleared. And someone who wasn't maybe as good at what they were doing got in a little bit of a hurry. So we need to have safety meetings. Now there's a bunch of ways to do safety meetings. And I won't try to be an expert, but I've done them a few ways. I've learned a couple things. I think you probably have too. Rule number 1, you have to have them. Have a safety plan, and then go through it regularly. What happens in our industry, especially in residential, is we typically will do this. We'll say, okay, we're going to have a tailgate meeting or whatever you want to call it, and we'll have donuts and coffee and whatever. And we'll have a meeting. We'll say, oh, let's do it on a Monday morning. If you're doing it Friday morning, wrong day to do it. Because Saturday morning, Monday, they've forgotten everything. Do it Monday or Tuesday. Do it in the morning, not in the afternoon. And so it needs to be a regular basis. So how often should you do it? Well, I'll leave that to you. It's as often as you need to make sure that everyone's on the same page and doing the right things. If you see a behavior on the site that doesn't match your safety program, it's time to train again really hard.
Well, like if you got a crane day, you got a crane day, you
Yep.
always have a safety meeting.
Yep.
You always have,
Yep.
you know what I mean?
Yep.
It just depends on what's going on.
It actually does. But just make sure you're doing that based on the need. That's my best recommendation. When you get a new trade, you've got rid of that B- trade that you didn't like, and you've got a new one that's hopefully your new A. Yeah. Now, see, I have ABs, so that's why I love that saying.
Well,
But it's true. It's true. It's true. The bottom line is, we tend not to train them. Sometimes we just forget about them because they're new on the job. We go, hey, get here, get this done. And we don't take the time to make sure that they're properly trained. If there's an accident on site, and Steve, your company, it's your guy that gets hurt, and Osha comes, they're going to look at you and your company really closely and scrutinize, was that person properly trained? Did they have the knowledge requisite not to do what they did that got them hurt? Then they're going to look at the other companies on site that are doing work that are totally unrelated to what happened. Do they have a safety program? Is it in writing? Do they regularly train? Then they're going to come to you, the builder, and say, do you have a training program that overlaps and meshes with them? And are you doing it? Because if you don't, guess what? You and I are both on the hook. Even though it was you and your guy, I'm still going to be on the hook because I'm a builder. So, and again, that varies, but usually the builder gets brought into it and the contractor. And if you happen to be on a job site that interfaces with that trade that got hurt, you're going to get looked at too. So make sure it's documented, make sure you have it in writing, make sure everybody's getting trained.
See, when you asked all the questions you asked about accidents,
Yeah.
I've been shooting blocking, truss blocking, bird blocking, and shot a nail into my hand, I shot my foot. When I use duct tape and you go back to work, it's not lost
Well, you do, but a lot of people don't
now.
now. And all they have to do is make a phone call to OSHA. I'm not going to say any more.
Not my friend.
If you haven't had that happen, okay, so, you know, earthwork. I love that I can pick on you, Parker. Thank you. I mean, you're off doing your work. The guy operating this equipment needs to be really careful because he's got a lot of people around him that don't have a clue what the heck he's doing and what can happen. And it can happen really quickly because maybe he's picking up a rock or something and it drops but rolls and smacks some guy. I've seen that on a job site. Just happened that the rock fell out of the claw and it started rolling and some guy turned around and boom, hits him. Broke a shoulder, broke a leg, damaged his arm, had to have surgery.
Well, there you go, I've had that happen.
And it does happen.
That's a full-size hoe, ain't it?
That's a full-size hoe.
Wow, that's hard to make happen.
And so
I've had a 200 in a manhole, right down in it.
when you see pictures that are not like, but they're pictures like this, these are pictures I've actually taken on sites.
Upside down is bad.
And so, you know, we'll go to lift a wall and we'll say, you know, I'm buff. We can do this. Let's just lift the wall. Because that's our nature. It's in our DNA. I'm sorry. It's just we're in the construction industry. But the problem is we cause problems. And then you get to be my age and your back is a little bit not quite as strong as it once was.
Surgeries later.
We need to be smarter and make sure that when we're lifting heavy walls, if there's not a crane available, even though it may not be that heavy, we need to use multiple people. One of the major causes of downtime and insurance claims against builders is not having enough manpower to move material. Walls, setting up walls. Okay, now, you talked about a nail. How many of you have been impaled by something on a construction site? Yeah.
Got one finger left.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a cabinet maker. Yeah. Bottom line, so this guy, I know him personally. He's a good friend. Working on a house, framing. He's up on a ladder and on the outside of the house. And he's making sure that the top plate is nailed off. That's what he's doing. First problem, the ladder wasn't tall enough. And he's about 5'9" or 10. So he's reaching with his toe up on the ladder. He can hardly even see the top plate. And he's reaching up there with a nail gun
From the outside of the
from the outside of the house. I rest my case. And he's making sure it's nailed off. And so because of the angle, because of the leverage, the pressure on the gun, does a double shot. It bounces. And he got it in the elbow because it bounced. Boom! Now, he went to the hospital. They took one look at it and said, oh. So the doctor comes in and says, holy crap. And the doctor starts saying, how am I going to get this out?
Claw hammer.
And so he had his staff bring him some tools.
pliers.
And he says to one of his nurses, who said claw hammer? Bert, you get the A for the day. He says to one of his nurses, go down to the hardware store and get an all metal hammer, a claw hammer that's all metal. I don't care what it costs. Bring it back and sanitize it and bring it into the surgical suite. So the doctor makes the incision, puts the old metal claw hammer and pulls this nail out. That's the incision.
Nails are designed to stay in, not come out.
This is a very true statement. And they hold equally well in bone or wood. So guess what? He's not working.
Yeah, they're glue coated too.
He's not working. So they happen. One of the top accidents that proves deadly because of lack of knowledge are trench collapses. Because we believe that if you get collapsed and get caught in a collapse and you're not covered, you're fine.
It's a tourniquet.
It's a tourniquet. And I've seen people extremely injured who had dirt no higher than their waist.
When I was 18, I got caved in on and put clay.
Okay.
Came in and about broke both my knees. I mean, it took me right down.
It's kind of like the power of water. It's amazing what happens, and it happens very, very quickly. I can't tell you how many sites I've been on where they've said, oh, we don't need to put any trench protection in, or we don't need to slope it because we're only going to be here for 5 minutes. We're only going to be down in the trench for a couple minutes to lay that last piece of pipe. It happens, and it happens frequently.
They won't come in on you. You know?
Okay, so I had a subdivision I developed, and I was building some custom homes, and I had other builders that were building in there as well. I got to tell you this story. So the framers were setting the roof trusses. And like most framers, they're a brave lot. And he's walking around up on the trace. This is not him, by the way. It's just the closest picture I could find of what he was doing. And then he got down in, and the garage had been poured, and he's over the garage, and he's setting the trusses. And his nail gun slipped. And so he didn't want to drop his nail gun onto the concrete. So he reached to grab it. He's standing on the edge of the wall. And he fell in through the trusses, head first onto the concrete floor. About a 14-foot drop. Never worked in the construction industry again. And lost he was able to get back to about 75% of his normal motor skills. A simple, quick accident. He was trying to protect his nail gun, is what he told us later.
It's like swerving for a deer.
Yeah. The bottom line is it cost him a livelihood and it really affected his life for the rest of his born days. So when we're doing things like this, and we do them all the time, guys and gals, I mean, it's just what we do in our industry. We're always lifting stuff and moving stuff, and we just have to be careful. I remember when we first got called out by Osha, and they said you have to use fall protection when you're up on a roof. And I'm thinking, really? That's a lot of work to go up and do a couple a flashing up on a roof. But the reality is, we do come off roofs once in a while. I was on a roof, and we were just finishing up, and we had a couple sheets of 1/2 inch up there, and I thought, okay, I got to just take them to the end of the roof and kind of throw them off. So I had a piece of 4x8 1/2 inch OSB in my hand like this. I'm carrying it like this, and I'm on the roof, and the slope's like this, and I'm walking across the roof carefully, and it wasn't that steep of a roof, and the wind hit, just a teeny little gust, and I was flying through the air. And don't ask me why, but I held on to that stupid piece of plywood.
Did you save it?
And both the plywood and I survived. No bruises, no broken bones, but it literally took me to the ground very, very slowly. Usually, I think normally I would have just tossed that thing and taken my chances, but it happened so quick, I didn't even think. But I literally landed on the ground, not on concrete, but on some dirt, missed the concrete by a few inches, and I was fine. So we need to be careful when we're up on roofs. What do you see wrong with this picture?
They don't have safety belts on.
There's no roof jack, there's no safety belts.
I've seen guys do that. We've sat and talked about them going, man, those guys are brave, man.
Well, and I wouldn't even say brave. I'd say pretty stupid.
This was in the winter when I was watching.
Roof jacks or nothing.
Any of us that have ever been on a roof have done this at least once. But then you go to slip once, and I don't know about for you, but my aha moment came when I actually slipped a little bit on the roof, and I thought, whoa, that's a long way down there. I don't want to be falling off this roof. And I changed my attitude and said, okay, I'm going to put the jacks on. I'm going to take the time to move the jacks. It takes time to do it right, but it only takes a split second for an accident to occur.
Especially in the middle of winter when it's slick.
Yeah. Or after a rainstorm. OSB and it's been wet all night long, and you get up on that OSB the next morning, oh my goodness. Again, it takes a second.
There's a little sawdust, you know?
Sawdust is even worse than water because one, you don't see it, and two, it's just like putting wax paper on a cookie sheet. You are gone. If you see this, you know, we've all heard the term now, see something, say something. If you're on a job site and you see this kind of behavior, if you're not the builder, say something to the builder. Bring it to the builder's attention. If they wave it off, so be it. But don't let that kind of behavior happen because it's not healthy.
There's a lot of third world countries in Utah. It's pretty good health. They don't think about safety, they don't care about safety, they just wanna get it done and go to the next job.
Well, and so you have to go back. You have to go back, language barrier. You have to go back to training and culture and look at all those factors and say, yes, but in some of those areas, they don't have the litigation we do. And you go on and on. So communication's key, and we talked about that earlier in the day, that communication is critical. I don't know how many of you have ever been up on a roof and set this type of a harness system up and done it. It's a pain in the rear.
But it's good.
It doesn't take a long time, but it's just a pain.
You just gotta nail, you dig
But-
it off and-
But if you do it, it just prevents those one-off accidents from happening. And typically when people come off a roof, it's not really a fun experience, and usually something gets broken. You're good? You're just kind of getting that, you're just itching that, okay. You gotta be careful when you raise your hand in my class. Okay, trusses. Some markets, they still stick frame, if you can believe it, everything. Our market is really a truss market. We still do some stick framing and some overbuilding, but for the most part, we are a frame. We truss and throw it up. And whenever I see a boom truck like this and multiple trusses going up, I always get just a little queasy. And then when I see this one, I really get queasy. Because I'm going, who's underneath that thing while they're swinging and pivoting it? Now, I got to admit, building them on ground and assembling them really is a great way to go. It's a strategic move to efficiency and operational excellence. I love it. But you got to connect the dots and say, okay, now we're going to lift that assembly, one shot, and drop it up on that roof perfectly, and that's great. But you got to make sure you're taking the steps to make sure everyone around is protected. Because if you do, then it's wonderful. But if you don't, can you imagine that thing coming loose off that crane and coming down on the ground to...
That's a building system, right?
That's why you wear a hard hat.
Yeah, well... I think you need a lot more than... hard hats are great, but they're a little bit oversold, I think, with what they really will do. Because they'll protect your head from having all the stitches, but of course the broken neck's not going to make any difference, right? So you need to, again, it's a system and it's a way of doing things, but again, you've got to throw in that safety element. And that's the part we miss quite often, is that safety element. Or when we tell a laborer, oh yeah, we've got to move those 80-pound bags or whatever it is from there to there. And they're spending all day long bending over with their back instead of their knees, and they're picking up those bags and carrying them. And then 2 weeks later, they can't walk, and we're paying a medical bill. It just comes back to basics. Railings, another big, these are all issues that we see in the industry that cause lawsuits, by the way. So putting up temporary railings in a structure is, again, a pain. It's a pain in the rear. Who's going to walk off the top of that? Well, it happens. You're up on that mezzanine and you turn around and you slip and off you go, and someone gets hurt. But there's a lot of systems out there, and I'm not going to preach any specific brand, but you can buy some temporary, as these little pocket sockets that you literally just lag down or screw down and drop a 4x4 or a couple 2x4s in them, and they're really quick to put up. And then you pull them apart and use them on the next job. They're easy to do, they're safe, and they keep people from getting hurt. If you don't use them, the fines from Osha are really, really big. If you miss any of the stuff we've talked about today. So I was down in Salt Lake, uptown. This was probably about 5 years ago. I'm working on a project. It was an old post office at one point and a couple other things, and then it was converted into condos. And they had a lot of water intrusion. And so I was working on that, and I happened to be upstairs, and I was looking out a very dirty old window. Sorry, it's just the way it was. And there was an old building across from us that they're going to convert to condos, old office type building, warehouse that was going to be converted to condos. And so they're working on that. And you can see the guys, all the watchers down here. Then look at the two guys up on the top. There's a concrete slab sitting on top of that little building. I don't know if it was a compressor room or what it was. But they're up there with a 20-pound sledge, and they're swinging away, breaking that roof that they're standing on, and they're breaking it up, and there's not an inch of support. Now, I'm on the 3rd floor looking up at them. So I'm 3 levels up. and they're going to go straight down to asphalt when they come off that roof. And I'm thinking, who is the builder? Where's their safety guy or gal? How come they don't have any fall protection? And why don't they even have a guardrail around this thing? But more important, why are they breaking the floor they're standing on? I mean, lots of issues with that. So I had to take a photo. And then I inserted it in this class because I thought it was great.
Serious?
So I'm in Utah County, and I'm there for some meetings, and the building, the HVAC has gone out. So it's hot. And everyone's miserable and cranky. And they said, oh, we're getting a new air conditioning unit lifted up on the roof today. And by the end of the day, we should have air. I said, cool. So we finished our meetings, and as I was walking out to get my vehicle to come home, sure enough, there's the crane. And sure enough, people have parked all the way around, and they just rolled that crane right up in the middle of the parking lot, blocked cars, and they just picked up off the trailer. There's the old unit that they pulled off, and they're putting the new unit up on top. And they don't care. People are walking to their cars or where the cars are. They're just lifting those things and moving around. I'm thinking, if one of those drops onto a car, they're buying a new car. If somebody worse gets hit with the head, but no flags, no barricades, no nothing, not even barrier tape. I mean, come on, put out a couple cones and put some barrier tape and go ask the people to move the cars where you're going to be swinging that crane. And I'm thinking, man, the builder or the HVAC contractor's in deep doo-doo land here. Been there. And heaven forbid that the owner of the building, if someone got hurt, and they were the ones that authorized. So they literally just pulled that crane up and dropped the pads down and started lifting and doing their magic. Not a single car was moved. Pretty amazing. So who does Larissa?
The guy on a commercial site that goes and tries to find people to move their cars.
Yeah.
And you get him with his excavator in somebody's car and say, beat the hell out of that car and say, I'm sick of asking people to move. Throw it in a dump truck and haul off a car.
Yeah. Well, I've seen builders take their big trucks and hook on a tow strap or a chain and drag a car out of the way. And the owner comes running out and they're saying, hey, it said no parking. Now, we either had to move you or we took the risk of hurting your car. And the bottom line was, you broke the law. I have permission to move your car. End of story. Oh, but you're trucking away. Tough. So the responsibility does lie with each of us, doesn't it? Again, it starts with the top, ownership of the company, and it filters all the way down because our attitude is going to filter down. And if we're trying to be safe, trying to regulate some good basic protocols, it doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be real hard. We just need to have a plan in place that we can actually make sure that everybody's on the same planet as we are when it comes to stuff. Delivery of materials is another big one. That sometimes we don't prep the site appropriately for them to bring materials, or there's no place for them to stage the materials. And that can cause some severe safety issues. And that's on us. We should plan ahead and be thinking about that. So there's some topics. So as you're thinking about your existing safety protocol, or you're going to write a new one, and even if you're a solo person in your company, put together a safety plan. If you ever get busted by Osha and you have a written document and you put it together, it's better than not having one. But topics, scaffolding, big issue. Fall protection, big issue. By the way, ladders, another real big issue. How many times have we seen a ladder on a job site where because of the terrain and the dirt and the whatever, someone will stick a couple 2x4s under one leg to plane it up? Absolute no-no. Absolute no-no. That's why they make ladders now with adjustable legs. But you get caught on that on a site with OSHA and you're in deep doo-doo. Stairways, another big one. People falling off stairs, no handrail, no temporary handrail, or up at the top of the stairs at the landing. It's open, wide open to the bottom. And if you're on a job site as a trade and the builder's not taking care of those kinds of things, I'd add that to my construction contract and I'd call them up and say, hey, I've got to pull my people off the job because it's just too unsafe. You and I can't afford to have an accident, and then make it happen that way. Temporary railings, again, with the stairs. We already talked about PPE. If you're not wearing it, start today. If you don't have it, buy one item, buy the hat or buy the gloves or buy the glasses, do something. But excavation and trenching, another big one, where we can have issues if we're not careful. And if we have an excavator that doesn't believe in safety. And this one personally scares me the most because I've seen a couple people that have got buried and scrambled.
Fred was killed when we were 18.
Really?
Up in Braintree.
Wow.
Buried alive.
There's nothing worse than scrambling, whether it's an avalanche in snow or a dirt cave, and there's nothing worse than trying to unbury somebody, dig them out. You feel so helpless.
I don't know anybody that hasn't been buried. I've been buried.
Yeah.
I've never been.
And you live to tell the story.
Yeah.
Cranes and pump trucks, treat a pump truck just like a crane because they are a crane. That's what they're doing.
Except for hydraulic train, they lose a hose and everything, they'll crash.
Yeah, big time.
Not the same safety.
Not the same protocol, but still treat them as if you need to be safe around them. And that's my point. Different type of equipment. Usually a crane will stay up unless it's a windstorm that blows it over. Cables will break, couplers will break,
I have a picture of a
or, yeah,
truck tipped over.
yeah. But pump trucks, if the hydraulics go, it's a whole nother can of worms. Forklifts, other types of lifts, I've seen those come over many times. Uneven terrain, someone trying to overreach. That's a big problem with lifts, is always overreaching. Maxing out the load weight and then going too far because they're just not familiar. They haven't had the proper training. We need to be careful with those. And then hazard communication. It goes back to our plan. What are we doing? What are we trying to do? And how are we going to implement that in our company? Top 5, and now here's sad. First time I did this presentation was in 2014. Gets updated every year. Every couple of years I do a survey with builders and engineer companies and inspectors around the country that I'm connected to. Top 5 OSHA violations. My neighbor to the rear of me is an OSHA inspector. He always gets to chime in. These are the top 5. You need to know that it's the same top 5 that I've been doing since I first started doing this presentation. Hasn't changed. Scaffolding, fall protection, mainly roof and harnessing, ladders, head protection, stairways, and then I would add trench collapsing.
Trench and falls are the number one death.
Well, they happen. I'm talking about frequency, but yeah, not deaths. But you're correct.
I tell you what, fall protection, here's the thing a lot of people don't understand is if you are wearing a harness, if they're demanding you wear a harness on certain jobs, you need to ask what the rusty plan is. Because a body harness is just critical. Immediately it turns into a critical.
Yep.
In 20 minutes, you will be losing your life.
I watched a.
They're aware of what who's rescuing you, how they're rescuing you, and what they're talking about.
It's a good point. I saw a guy come off a ladder that was restrained, turned upside down, and the first thing they did was set up a couple of ladders and set up a couple of guys to try to help, and then they got the nearest crane and put a basket in it and a couple crew and swung it around and dropped it down so that they could cut him loose and put him onto that basket and lower him to the ground. And it all happened within about 5 minutes. So he survived. But they had a plan.
Right. If they don't have a plan, it takes 20 minutes to figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah, where's the basket? Who's going to hook it up? Yeah, exactly. So that's a great ad. Thank you. So again, do you have a formalized program? It can be very simple. It can be done on a handwritten piece of paper, honestly. It can be done on your computer. You can hang it in your office. You can have a copy in your vehicle. If you're like me, I spend a lot of time in my office. By that, I spend a lot of time in my office, quote, vehicle. Have it there as well. But have a plan and make sure everybody on the job site talks about it. Again, back to communication. What are the benefits? What do you think the benefits we're going to end here really quick. What are the benefits of having a safety program? You don't make money putting together a safety program.
That guy that was hanging upside down,
Yeah.
his life depended on it.
His life depended on it. Yep.
And all the rules
Yep.
are written in blood.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I'm fortunate. When that tractor hit me, it's literally a miracle I didn't get killed. Half an inch lower
Wasn't your day.
on that bucket. November 1997.
I said it still wasn't your day.
No, it still wasn't my day.
If it was your day, you guys would have been dead.
Well, I'd been dead. You're right. You're right. But had that bucket bounced or had that bucket been half an inch lower, I would have had teeth right into my forehead. and I'd been
Did
dead.
you sue him?
I didn't.
You didn't?
I didn't, but he never worked for my company ever again. Ever again. And when people were asking about that service, I never referred him. He became an F sub, not an A or B, an F sub.
Your neighbor or the guy working for your neighbor?
I actually fired my neighbor too. Yeah. Yeah, there was just one too many things that were adding up, and I decided, he's a good guy. I'd rather be his friend and neighbor than have, so we parted ways. So benefits, reduce risk and exposure. Exposure is the big thing. Again, we're small companies. We can't afford huge, huge lawsuits. Safer work environment. Craig, was it you that was talking about just cleaning the site and taking care of things, and everyone just seems to things go smoother? Was that a good interpretation of what you kind of said earlier on? True statement. It just makes a difference. It makes a huge difference. We can't quantify it, but it does make a difference. Less job downtime, more productive man hours, and on and on. So how do you do it? You're the gatekeeper. Starts with you. Everyone in this room has that responsibility. If you don't have one, create it this week. Start with something simple. If you don't, and you didn't write down notes and you can't remember, all you got to do is grab a card, send me an email, and I'll send you a copy of that slide that has all those things. No cost, free of charge. Use it as you will. Create a plan. That's what you need to do. Take that assignment. Train regularly. Back to Walt's comment. It depends on the circumstance and what you're doing, how frequency that training needs to take place. Dave, you're a remodeling contractor, right? So you're not going to need to train as often as maybe Parker needs to be training. But you still need to be training. So judge based on what you're doing and what's going on around you. And insist that your trades comply. Back to your AB multiple subs. If I had trades that didn't follow the safety plan or that were very, loose about it, we parted ways. I've had accidents occur on job sites where I was the developer. I've been hurt on my own job site. We've had some minor injuries on job sites, but no one got killed. No one had to stay overnight in a hospital. I'm grateful for that. We're fortunate. We're very lucky. But at the end of the day, insist that everybody complies, because that's the only way to make sure it happens. And then plan on when you're going to do that meeting. Is your organization big enough that you need to do it weekly? I doubt any of you really are. There are some of my clients that need to do it at least weekly. Every time a new trade comes on, they need to do it. You need to do it every time a new trade comes on. But for the most part, find what frequency works to keep it top of mind. And when you see something, a behavior that isn't appropriate, it's time to speak up. You may be worried that they'll be critical of you. Well, I'd rather than be critical of me, or than what Bert said, have that guy lose his life. He was grateful for that harness. It was whether he likes carnival rides or not, that was quite a ride coming off, because it's a quick jolt when you get to the end of that rope. Just like when I came off that roof with that piece of plywood, it was a real awakening for me, because all of a sudden, boom, I'm in the air. I can't grab anything. I'm on top of a roof, and I've got a sheet of OSB in my hand, and I'm flying through the air. Too bad I don't have video of that. That actually could really be great to add to the class. Comments, thoughts that you'd like to share regarding things that you've done or you've seen regarding safety in the industry that would be pertinent to today's conversation?
I've seen it all in 40 years.
Okay? And those of you that haven't seen it will. But the key is just have it top of mind. It's like everything else. If we're thinking about it, we usually do something about it. And it may not be enough, but it'll be something. And something's better than nothing. Thank you. We are done for the day.